leadership scene, so popular things like, what's your elevator pitch, right? And I think frameworks are good and they are necessary, but I think at the very essence of, and I will use the word persuasion, more than sales, is who you are. The messenger is the message. Very rarely in enterprise situations do people buy your product because your features are so superior. Now, there are always exceptions to the rule, and in a lot, I suspect, of the industries and the products that we are all involved in, there will always be someone who can do something better, right? In 6 months' time, if a company threw enough money at something, they would have the same thing as you. So ultimately, how do you stay ahead of the game in an enterprise situation? For me personally, I learned it the really hard way. It's down to you as a messenger. If the company buys who you are, they will buy your product. Because if I like you, I'm very forgiving of your mistakes. If I don't like you, everything is a pain in the ass, right? So that would just be my opening statement. Thank you.
Hi, good evening everybody. This is Aju. I've spent the last 16 years in the enterprise solution space. I would like to credit having a really good experience in selling enterprise solutions from core enterprise resource planning. My desire moved me into business process management solutions. When we're out there trying to position ERP 16 years ago, what came out of conversations were systems are not the problem, process is the problem. I was fortunate enough to get a stint with a German company, spent a couple of years with them, also doing enterprise sales for business process management. And after a while, it was a big storyboard about it's not the system, it's not the process, it's about the alignment. And then came out the conversation around enterprise architecture. I spent a couple of years with IBM running their enterprise architecture practice. And again, as part of my journey, realized it's not the system, it's not the process, it's not the alignment, it's the people. And then I got across, which I've spent the last 8 years within the HR domain. Again, selling enterprise systems within HR. I would dare say that in this past 16 years, nothing really has changed from the sales perspective. Definitely what has changed is the knowledge of the consumer. I don't personally not necessarily give too much respect to just the C-level guys. I think in the community we are in, people like you guys are C-level already. You made the executive decision to come and join us tonight. Nobody forced you, I hope so. Nobody pushed you down. And it was a decision that you fundamentally took. So there was something that obviously pushed you into this session with us. And I think within the sales domain, 3 things has always been there. One is the context of what issue we're resolving. The content, which would be what would be the overall solution we are giving to any level in the organization, and again, at the end of the day, the context that we have in the organization. Today, I would second Ross's statement, Rosalie, anytime. Ross's statement around it's important to connect with the people because today I have a statement that I make to my own salespeople is the CEO, the CFO, and even the CIO, they're actually not the product decision maker. They're just the endorser. It's the people below them that fundamentally recommends it to a point and will carry on that conversation. You are the people connector for that C-level person. So with that as a baseline, I'm happy to take questions and we're happy to have the discussion.
Okay, so I'm Jack. My name, a lot of people say, is probably appropriate for me. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. I was fortunate enough for my current role to have the master in the title, but don't be deceived by that. Ross has been, what's the word? A career entrepreneur. Is that what you use? A serial entrepreneur. I'm the opposite. I'm a career professional. So I've been working as an employee for the last maybe 20 plus years. I'm aging myself. Been through the ropes from operations to services to delivery to sales to pre-sales. So end to end. My current role now is actually quite interesting. It's now in one of the hottest solutions, cloud. Everyone talks about cloud. It's almost like client server, like cloud. But I've been around long enough to actually apply what I've learned in my 20 years back in actually how to talk about and how to solution and sell cloud. So happy to talk more about it. Let's just end with one statement. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So I'm one of those one-eyed men. Okay?
Okay, so what we're going to do now is before we start asking questions of them, I would like to ask questions of you, right? Let's start with the audience rather than start with the panel. This is also to help the panel understand what kind of questions you'll be and answers you'll be interested in, right? Okay, so tonight we want to focus on this subject, which is how to sell to the C-suite, right? Or how to sell to the C-level, or how to sell to the CXOs or the executive decision makers, whatever we call them, right? Now, I think there's a huge interest in trying to be able to reach the C-levels, right? People talk about it in sales meetings and company meetings all the time. So the question I want to ask of all of you here, right? And let your answers also be questions for the panel, which is, what are the challenges you're facing in addressing or trying to reach the C-levels, right? And what kind of questions you might have, Anyone?
I think C-level people do not have time for lower level life forms like salespeople.
Okay.
That's not you.
Okay, so one challenge rather. C-level people do not have time for lower level life forms like us salespeople, right? Or at least that's what they believe. That's one challenge, right? So how can we deal with that? Okay, I'll table that. Other questions, please.
In view of mobile explosion growth, as in like in 2018, we will reach about 70% of the internet is going to be mobile and coverage. How does C-suite view, or how the salespeople view on how this change or mobile explosion or internet explosion, the digital explosion, contributes to the sales process in reaching C-suite?
Okay, that means, if I may paraphrase, the impact of all this mobile communications and what do the C-suite actually think about it as an impact, if they are thinking about it, for example, right?
Yeah.
Good question, right? Yeah. Okay, next.
If I may just run on the question that you made, there is always this statistic going around saying that a lot of decision makers have whatever percentage would have made up their mind before they make a buying decision, and they're influenced by what they read, what they see, and so on. I'm just wondering at the C level, especially in this part of the world where we expect the C levels to be on LinkedIn or on mobile platforms and doing all the research, whether or not in reality do they really have time to actually do all the research, or do they leave it to the lower life form? So and say, you guys go find out what we need, and so So I guess the question is, do C-level today participate so much in actually doing the research before making a buying decision, particularly through online?
Okay, cool. Let's have 2 more questions.
In this world, because everything that you say is so accessible, at least I found that most people have some existing solution, some incumbent solution already, whatever your industry, or at least for our industry. So in that, the question becomes of not a sales but a replacement sales, and there's a lot of switching costs, and sometimes it's very difficult because of this situation. So how do you overcome that?
It's just to make sure I get it right. Are you talking about replacement as in a competitive sale or a renewal?
I'm talking about because, at least in my industry, which is like cloud software, people have an existing solution. So even though you're better, you're cheaper, you're more productive, it's still like a replacement sale. It's not like something new. So in that situation, maybe because I struggle with replacing the incumbent product. So my question is, how do you tackle the problem of a replacement sales?
Okay, so the barriers of entries that are caused by having to
switching
replace
costs, yes.
incumbent. Okay, got it. Yeah. One more question?
My question is more on what kind of elements do C-level people look for when they have a simple conversation? Supposing you get through all the terms and you finally reach the top level. So what kind of elements of conversation do they look out for? I think that's a good.
That's really a good question, and one of the more important questions we want to address later. So finally, you get your foot in the door, right? And you have your 5-minute elevators pitch. So what do you do, right? I think that's the ultimate question we want to get to. Okay, just in case someone has a pressing question that I cut off with the 5 questions. Okay.
I have a slightly different view of what is being discussed. I think the C-level people are the most lonely people on the planet. And they are actually kind of hammered by a lot of sycophants in the company. So they are always looking out for somebody who is genuine, whether it be an insider or an outsider, who can be a coach to.
Can I invite you to sit over here, please?
I'm fine around. So I would think that the C-level is basically fortified by the organization boundaries, and that is kind of getting disrupted now, because typically C-levels react very nicely when you kind of send them a message over the weekend, because everyone is hooked up to their devices now.
Okay. That's really an interesting perspective. That means the state of being a C-level, the loneliness at the top, right? And how do we take that into consideration when we're interacting with that person? Sir, I think you have a question.
No, I was just, one of the challenges of spending a lot of time mapping out accounts in B2B sales is looking at all of the different levels and the world roles and how valuable is that anymore. If we take this into account, I just need to get in front of the one guy and my problem is solved. But generally, we also take the other view that that person isn't making a decision, then what is changing in terms of the way that we address B2B sales, in terms of methodologies. There's probably a million different sales approaches.
Yeah, I think that's also an important question. One of the things we were discussing, right, when preparing for this. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm gonna stop here. We will have more opportunity for questions later. So let's turn the spotlight back onto the panel. Okay, so I think we have heard some of the concerns, right, about sales, and I think those concerns are something that we have to fight with regularly. So it's not a question just in theory, but also in application. So bearing those questions in mind, let's look through some of the different perspectives. So one of the things we talked about was we try to do this first from a sales perspective, then all of them are going to put on their C-level head, and then they will speak, if I was a C-level and someone was trying to sell me, what I do, because all of them are or have been, right? So that's the cool thing, right? And then we'll go back to the sales perspective. So now the first question that we want to talk about is why do we want to meet a C-level in the first place? I think this is related to one of the questions that, at least two questions I remember, right? Do we need to meet a C-level in the first place? Is the decision really being made there? If it's not there, then why do we want to see him in the first place, right? So this and all the other things. So maybe we start with Rosalina. What do you think? Why? Okay. From your perspective, right? Oh, the other interesting thing, if I'm not sure if you have noticed, we have startup, mid-market, MNC, right? It's also a deliberate choice. Why I thought it was important to get them all together here. So let's go down the road.
So I do come from corporate, and I've been a C-level, and I think I would like to echo the last observation, but I wouldn't do it so drastically in the sense that C-level is lonely. I think they're less lonely than they used to be, right? But one of the things that I didn't appreciate as a C-level being bombarded, and this has nothing to do with sales, is the expectation that I had any decision-making power. I had the illusion because B2B sales is multi-stakeholder, complex, multi-region, multi-function sales process. And honestly, I don't want to make that decision. I much prefer someone that I appointed to make the decision. And I think writing off that, the truth of the matter, and so right now my startup is in the tech industry, most C-level, by function of their age, actually doesn't understand digital. So when I get in front of a C-level, which is very often, my first priority is not to make them look bad. I ask 0 questions about operational stuff. We really only sell the vision. And I rarely do a push. It's always a question. Would you be interested if? But that is assuming I know what the C-level is looking for. So in my industry, across the last 20 years, I would say that C-level has become increasingly less critical in enterprise decision-making. Is really at the functional level, and people that I actually want to talk to are the unit heads, because they have the greatest speed and flexibility, direct control of budget. Any decision that comes from the C-level is highly politicized. Everybody's kind of on the edge, right? Second-guessing everybody else. In enterprise sales, the cycle is already long enough. I don't need all those human trauma. That's my response.
So I think the final question about stakeholder maps or stakeholder engagement, and just extending to the viewpoint Ross has just shared, I still think that is extremely important, depending on what you're selling, who you're selling, and what are you fundamentally solving for the customer. For me, is it important to meet the C-level? I sincerely think it depends. If we can map the buying cycle of the customer with our selling expectation, I'm not going to call it sales cycle because every domain, every size of organization will have a different selling cycle. And now with the impact of digital, that has even gotten a lot more, in my view, complex more than anything else. I think it's important to take a look at what are we trying to solve for the customer. And sometimes, even at the enterprise level, I've sold solutions that are, a range of about $5 million, for example, and never met the C-level guy. never met anybody from the C-level because it's fundamentally a multi-stakeholder / committee-based decision-making process. Sometimes you think you can get it within Q4 and Q2, but it's never going to happen because fundamentally it's how the buying cycle of the customer is going to come into process. So when you look at decision makers within customers, you look at the business unit head, you look at the guy with the budget, may not be the business unit head, may be the CFO. You look at the procurement people who come in and say, is this going to fit within our environment? Is this going to be secure? Is it going to be blah, blah, blah? And then fundamentally, you look at the people that are going to be using this eventually. And sometimes it's very important, at least in my experience, to also facilitate what does change mean for the company. I had a question from the crowd that was around replacement sales. If it's cheaper, it's better, then you probably just need to reposition it slightly better against what they are already using. Customers need to be educated on why this is better and cheaper. Because it's not about the price, it's about the value. So it's a kind of long answer, but I'm trying to just mix up a couple of responses to all the questions that I'm getting, and I'm sure we'll extend to some of the other points. But I think to summarize, stakeholder management or stakeholder engagement, never leave it, whether it's a small, medium, or large company. I do have interest in startups as well, and the same thing as I tell these guys, it's very important, not exactly sales stakeholder management, but all about just stakeholder engagement. Who are you fundamentally selling into? Because as a startup, sometimes you don't have a storyboard. You just have a vision to sell, to Ross's point. As a medium enterprise, you may not sell into the industry before, but you may have similar storyboards that could come from, let's say, from a finance to a telco. Pretty similar from a process standpoint. And then from a large story, everybody knows it's a safer decision. I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but you always hear in some of the larger deals, they say the CIO will never be fired if he chooses IBM or Accenture. Never, because he'll always be trusted. I think that's changing also today. And I think the last point that we just bring down to is focus on the value. It's not really about the price. And I think I'm saying this to the converted, but we very easily, even my own sales team sometimes, forget the value in the conversation and go straight to how they want to start solving problems. That may not be the value, so I just want to end on that.
Okay, let's take a step back. So we're talking about enterprise sales. Okay, we're talking about selling to small, medium-sized, to large companies. So by that definition, it's already complex. Okay, it's not going to be something that you can close in 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 meetings. No, I think on average I could say it's more than that. It's not uncommon to have large enterprise sales closed maybe 6 months before you can actually close one by its nature. And because it does cover multiple stakeholders, it does cover multiple interests of stakeholders. To answer the question, does it help? Should we really be engaging with the CXOs? Being a salesman for many years, I can answer that with another question. Why not? Okay. What it is really is trying to get into the boardroom. If you have somebody in the boardroom who can be your ally, he can either make or break you. If your competitor is about to close a deal, right, but you've been able to get one of the boardroom members to your side, he can easily ask a question, and all it takes is one question to delay that deal. Okay? If on the other hand, your deal is the one on the table now, and somebody throws a question, and you have somebody there who's understand the value of your proposition, then he can be your ally and actually help you close that deal. So it doesn't hurt to have somebody in the boardroom. However, it should not be at the expense of all the other stakeholders within the company. It is a complex deal, and it does a lot of stakeholders in there. One of the things I did learn, I wish I had learned earlier on in life, is what Rosh just said. asking questions is probably more effective than making statements. Okay, there's this book by Thomas Friis. You should look at it if you haven't seen it yet. Question-based selling. One of the first things he does, or he teaches you, is to build credibility for yourself. And the way you do that is by actually asking questions. Okay, not necessarily making statements. Because you're making the other guy think, you're making the other guy look actually better than putting him in the spot. So, just something I'm sure most of the guys here probably learned earlier on, just worth remembering. It is important sometimes to ask questions more than just making statements.
That was awesome. You know what, because I was taking notes and I'm not sure if, okay, we didn't plan this, there was no rehearsal. And you know, I was looking at how the different answers come together. So we started off by saying, you know, the panelists started off by saying, don't make your C-level look bad. So you got your chance in front of the C-level, don't make him look bad, right? Engage, focus on the value, right? And you know, if you get a chance to see a C-level, why not? Don't overthink it, you know? If you've got a chance, is it good, is it bad? No, just take it, right? And it comes back in the circle, you know? Ask questions, right? You don't, and I think that's my personal experience, is that one of the best ways not to make a C-level look bad is to ask questions instead of tell the C-level, right? What you think he should be doing. I think that's a bad idea generally, but especially not with a C-level, right? So I think it's really awesome, you know, to hear all this validation.